Today I want to do a little documentation of a drill jig that I've put together that I'm going to be using for drilling the holes of my main spars and center spars together. Of course, the more accurately and perpendicular that you can get that, the better off you're going to be when it comes time to actually attach the wings onto a fully constructed aircraft. In an earlier video I had shown one attempt where essentially I had drilled out a hole in a piece of rod and actually used a vee-block. But I decided that it did a good enough job, but I thought I could do a little bit better than that, so I moved on to what I call sort of version 2 of this drill guide, and I just want to share a little bit of the details of its construction. So maybe it might be useful for someone building an airplane, or really, I think any situation where you need to drill a perpendicular hole. So of course the first part of this, of course, is the vee-block itself. For the guide, what I'm using is essentially a piece of 4130 tubing, and there is a 3/8 inch bushing added in. So that's added in on both sides. That was essentially pressed in. Now the inner diameter of this tube was a few thousandths undersized, so I did have to buy a reamer to ream the tube out to the size that I needed, so that this would be a nice press fit. Now for the guides themselves, I used, of course, 3/8 inch bushing, so this is a 3/8 inch rod, and of course it slips in there quite nicely, and there's pretty much no slop there. It's very nice tight fit. Now for the drill bits themselves, of course, trying to do something like this is not going to work too well with a drill chuck, especially once you get everything mounted up on here. Of course, there's no room for a drill chuck. But fortunately, there is some options available in the form of threaded drill bits. The ones that I purchased are from Pan American Tool, and I've got a variety of those. And of course, the main feature of these is that the end is threaded. So for the drill rod that I've got here, I drilled and tapped that out, and I was able to get basically create an extended drill bit. Now the only thing I did have to do with this, since I did use 3/8 rod here, actually the edges of this were just a little bit wider than 3/8 of an inch, so it was necessary for me to grind the ends down on this. Another thing that I'll point out that problem I had run into, I did have a problem with the first version of this drill extension not running evenly, and even though it looks straight, and I even looked at it on my surface plate and checked it on vee-blocks, for some reason it had some kind of inhomogeneity inside here, and I was getting a lot of bad vibration. And actually that's what was originally this one right here. So if you do decide to make one of these, one thing you want to do is, after you cut your length of rod, is chuck it up in your drill and make sure that it runs smoothly. If it vibrates around on you a lot, then you may want to cut a different length. Like I said, I'm not quite sure why I had the inhomogeneity there, if it was something in the construction of the rod when it was manufactured or what. But that's something you definitely want to check for. Now actually this rod did get used for a second purpose. For alignment purposes, I went ahead and chucked this up in my lathe and put a point on it, so that basically gives me a way to align the drill guide to a pre-existing hole. So just to show everything coming together here, trying to make sure that I'm centered. Of course, we've got our holder here. Then we'll drop this in, and one thing you want to do when you're doing this is make sure you leave yourself just a little bit of a gap for chip evacuation, and then just tighten that down. And of course, since this is a precision ground piece of metal, and this hole and this rod is also straight. I mean, I did check that on my surface plate just to make sure that there wasn't any out of roundness with the bar, or with the tubing. So when I put this straight up and down, this should be perfectly perpendicular. And of course, when actually doing the drilling operation, of course, we'll put this on here, and then we can just drop that down in here. And of course, that gives you what's needed to be able to drill your hole. And then of course, again, the for the centering, actually my first step would be to put my centering jig basically in place, or centering bar in place. And once that's done, then get this clamped down onto my workpiece. Now the other thing I'll point out is that the Pan American, I mean, they do sell a wide variety of bits, and one of the they do sell the bits that are bits and reamers that would be required to properly ream out the holes for the bolt holes for the Zenith 650 wing spar. So what I'm going to do now is, just to show how this is set up, I'm going to swing the camera around over to my vise. And what you see here is a test piece that I've been working with. And in fact, I've already got one test hole that I've done here. And this is actually one of the bolts. Now, of course, the bolts that are used for bolting the wings on are actually special bolts. And I noticed when I received these that they had a special indentation in them. So I'm assuming at the very least that provides an indication that this is a special shear bolt. But anyway, when I put this bolt in, having drilled it with what I did, I mean, there's pretty much zero slop in that. It's a very tight fit. So that makes me feel pretty confident that when I go to use this jig for real, that I should get good results. So just to show how this is used, go ahead and just go through a quick demonstration. So we've got the jig here. I've already I marked out my holes, and then the other thing I did is I went ahead and drilled in just a little bit so that I've got just a little bit of an indentation. So we'll drop our centering jig in and move that around until we've hit our mark. And then I've got a clamp that I can use to just get everything clamped down. Again, just trying to make sure that I don't shift that any more than necessary, and then lock that in place, which can take a second. Scoot around here, and it looks like we're lined up. Then we can take our alignment jig out and just sort of sight down and just make sure everything does look right, which it does. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just do a quick test drill here just to demonstrate how this works. So this is dropped inside here. I'm going to go ahead and hook up my drill. Of course, one of the reasons I used 3/8 was so that I wouldn't have to mess with using a using a 1/2-inch drill or having to turn down to size. So get this set up. And one thing to do is just give it a quick run. Make sure you've got no excessive vibration. Like I said, when I had initially used this piece of bar right here, it had some kind of inhomogeneity in it. I was getting a whole lot of vibration. Okay, and then just put a little bit of WD-40 on here. Get around here to where I can see what I'm doing. Which I'll point out, these purchased some of these little 1-inch bottles with the syringes on them, syringe tips on them, blunt tip syringes, and these have come in quite handy. I've found for when I need to just put small amounts of lubrication in places instead of having to use the spray bottle. This is filled up with WD-40 from a 1-gallon can, and it lasts quite a while. I've done quite a few holes, and it just saves you from having to have quite the mess. So we'll go ahead and drop this in. And we'll take this down, and we'll just get our drill started here. course, as I'm doing this, if my face is showing, I forgot to put my safety glasses on, but probably be okay. So anyway, that gets the hole started. Now, actually, you'll notice this is actually a short bit here. I had bought 2 lengths of bits, a shorter bit. I wanted to make sure that I had the shaft always engaged with the bearing, so I went with a shorter length so that the end of the shaft when I'm starting my hole matches, and then went with a longer bit to be able to complete the hole the rest of the way. So I think that's all I've got to cover for this. Like I said, I've been pretty happy, been quite happy with the results of this. I think when it comes time to actually go ahead and drill get my wing spar drilled in, I should have some good results and shouldn't have things going off at funny angles. So that's all I'll cover at this point. Let me know if you have any questions. I've actually got my my wing spar actually laid out. I'll probably do another video here very shortly showing how I've got that laid out. So again, just to provide maybe a little bit of some ideas maybe for somebody that's scratch building an airplane and trying to figure out how to do some of these operations. Okay, just to provide a little different view here, I realized that really the shot that I had didn't provide a good view of the chips themselves. I decided to go ahead and swing the camera around here just to show a different view. Went ahead and I've got my longer bit in now, so I can go ahead and take the hole all the way through, which I could not do with the shorter bit. So again, we'll squirt a little bit of WD-40 on there, maybe go ahead and throw a little bit on the bit itself, and we'll go ahead and drop that down in there. Looks like we're all set, and we'll go ahead and complete this hole. And the hole is all the way through. And then just one other shot I'll show here just to give a little bit better of a view. This is essentially the see if I can get this thing stood up here. Just showing everything together with the bit hanging off of there.